Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, Artificial Intelligence, Friend or Foe? Is artificial intelligence enriching the human race or killing us slowly? In today's podcast, we will unpack the reasoning behind why groups of people feel strongly that AI is capable of destroying the human race and why tech industry experts say AI is vital for our existence and isn't going away. Ron, I just saw a video on LinkedIn of an automated pizza shop where not one human being is needed to run the functionality, including payment. What are your thoughts on that, and why are there such strong opinions on either side of the aisle?
Well, I think there's reason for strong opinions, and we're going to go into some of the dangers here in a bit. But as for the pizza shop, I mean, it's very simple. People lost jobs.
Right.
And I think that's going to continue to happen as long as we see the progression of AI. And we're going to have to figure out a way to provide alternative jobs. And I'm just not sure where this is going to go.
Right. I'm not either. And I'll tell you what, the pizza looked like trash. So I'm not sure it did. It looked it didn't look appetizing whatsoever. It could be that I'm slightly biased because I feel like humans are so vital in our existence. We need the human concept, the human touch, the human interaction to survive. But we'll go into all that. There's lots to unpack in this one.
There is a lot to unpack for sure. First, I'll define specifically what AI is and how we use it today. In its simplest form, artificial intelligence is a wide-ranging branch of computer science concerned with building smart machines capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. That's the kind of a simple definition.
Yeah.
To address the opposition, people are concerned with replacing human jobs.
Mm-hmm. That's
Kristin?
a big one. Yeah, I wanted to share a story about when I was a branch manager at a bank, because this goes back 10 years ago, before all the advancements that are taking place currently. There was this huge push to push customers out of the bank lobby to the ATM. So they had the store manager, myself, and all of the other store managers, we had to stand in the lobby. And when somebody came up to make a deposit with one of your tellers, they called it ATM migration. So we had huge ATM migration goals. We were responsible for physically bringing the customer outside and showing them how to do whatever transaction they were there to do at the ATM. This didn't go over very well, and I had people pointing out to me, that this will replace you eventually, right? And it's hard to argue with that. You just kind of, yeah, I agree. I agree. I see where you're going with it. But I'll tell you what, Ron, I have not had to work with a bank teller to do a transaction in over 5 years. I do everything on my phone or at the ATM. So there's pros and cons there.
Wow. I used to get a lollipop when I went to the bank. I guess that's out.
Yeah.
In a similar fashion, there was a huge controversy in U.S. probation because they started thinking, okay, we can have someone under supervision just report in, have a retina scan, provide their monthly report and give an update without meeting with them. But of course, we considered ourselves agents of change and we wanted to impact and change behavior. So that was eventually shot down, but I'm sure it's still being looked at, around the world as far as that goes.
Oh, yeah.
The other concern is it will stifle creativity. If you've got a machine doing it for you, for example, even calculators, there's a reason teachers don't want calculators in classrooms in certain classes. So it might stifle creativity. It might make people lazy. The expense involved, at least the startup expense. And this is huge, the lack of ethics.
Right.
Who determines the ethics that's programmed into these machines for an AI bot, for example?
Yeah.
And then there's the lack of emotion. And this is the most controversial. We're going to talk more about it, is too much control. I think we might shudder if we really knew how much control there is on American citizens. So I think that's those are all valid concerns. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. And something I hear a lot is that AI is invasive and holds too much power, to what you just said. For instance, just last week, Amazon shut off a man's smart home devices for a full week after a delivery driver falsely accused the customer of hurling a racial slur via a doorbell intercom. Amazon confirmed that they did this to this customer, that they shut his Amazon home off for a week. The customer's name, Brandon Jackson. He's been interviewed by numerous outlets. He is a black man and said he found himself digitally exiled by the company on May 25th, less than 24 hours after an Amazon delivery driver dropped off a package at his home and reported him for being racist. There's a number of issues here. I will break it down. One, this is relying on perception, not reality. I don't know about in your world, Ron, but when we were in business, you weren't customer facing, but we had the customer perception. We would say the customer perception is their reality. And so we would always keep that perception in mind. But in this case, when someone can simply say they hurled a racial slur at me and have all their smart system turned off for a full week without any evidence, that's very concerning. So the customer, Brandon, he provided evidence showing that nobody was home and that the auto response that the delivery driver heard was, "Excuse me, can I help you?" That was AI saying that. That was not a person saying that. I'm not sure how he got a racial slur out of "excuse me, can I help you?" but he reported it as such. The delivery driver who reported the racism was wearing headphones. So that's another interesting factoid there. Nobody was home at the time of the delivery, and evidence was provided to Amazon, yet the account remained locked out for a full week, even though the evidence was provided within 24 hours of the incident. The customer, Brandon, he is now questioning his decade-long relationship with Amazon.
You think?
Rightfully so, and a lot of other people should be as well. Wow.
Well, I think there is a unique contradiction, though. AI, served to get his house locked, but yet AI rescued him because he had the systems in place to show no one was home.
Right.
So that's a great example of the pros and cons right there.
Right.
Maybe he'll get a cash settlement out of this.
I'd like to know, you just wonder at what point. I can understand we want to protect delivery drivers, but there has to be an evidence element to it. You have to have something of evidence, something solid before you can impact someone's life to this extreme.
I remember when Amazon started taking pictures of your package on the porch so that, people couldn't claim they didn't receive their package.
Yes.
Interesting stuff. Wow.
It is.
Okay, Kristin, let's go way back to the 17th century.
Ooh.
I bet you didn't think we would be talking about AI in the 17th century.
I did not.
So Forbes put out a recent article, and because the story I'm about to tell has gained popularity again. But Rene Descartes, 17th century French philosopher who actually coined cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am, which is the first principle of Enlightenment philosophy and science. But there's an eerie, unsettling story about Descartes. He had a relationship with a servant, Helen von der Strom, and their relationship produced a young daughter, Francine, to whom Descartes was very attached. Tragically, Francine died of scarlet fever at age 5. Descartes was so distraught that he built a robot, which was called an automated clockwork like doll, and he kept it. And it was built in her likeness, so it really did resemble her. So he transported it in a casket. And on a trip to visit Queen Kristin of Sweden, the crew of the ship on which he was traveling became so alarmed. It was a stormy night, and they could hear Descartes murmuring to the doll.
Wow.
They actually invaded his quarters and threw the doll overboard. They broke it up and threw it overboard.
Oh, my gosh.
He was even more distraught. They don't know if it's connected, but he died just a little while after that. But that story is coming up simply because the robots are starting to get all the facial features, and they're getting to the point where they can actually make them look like someone else.
Right.
So these types of stories have led to, the Terminator movies. I don't know if you watched those, but that was extremely interesting. And then you had Will Smith in I, Robot, and those robots became so sophisticated, they attempted to destroy the human race. And there's so many different sci-fi movies, shows that have touched on all this, but I think we looked at it, it's like watching the Jetsons. This might happen,
right,
but it's some other time in the future. But the amazing part, and Kristin, as you and I have been researching, it's happening right now.
It is.
And some people in the world of technology believe that AI could have the potential to think for itself, and that is scary.
Oh my goodness. It is scary.
Yeah. Another concern is virtual reality. You're going to love this one. People are actually dating AI bots.
Oh my goodness.
What do you think of that, Kristin?
Not positive things. I think it's exploiting someone's mental illness is what it is. That is a concern all around. And it sounds like they've been doing it since the 1700s, but now you can actually have it look and talk and think like a human. So why the need to get to know somebody, right?
Yeah.
Or even leave your house anymore?
Kristin, I got to tell you, in all the research you and I did collectively, I did watch a YouTube video, and there was an iBot, and when they would get close, it would blink, it would move away, so it literally could react to human touch. And maybe that's a whole other story.
That is. There's so much to this. If we think of Facebook and what they've done, they're creating the metaverse, right? I have a friend, Alex Stein. He's a comedian, and he said he went on and was speaking out in a joke fashion, but he was like, I've been sexually assaulted in the metaverse, and he spoke out to the city council about his concerns with it. He's joking, but what he's doing is shedding light on the crazy world we're living in and the future, and the fact that people are really focusing on not having to interact. I have a lot of concerns with folks feeling really that they don't have a need to leave the house anymore. And of course, this is generally the younger generations. But when you have something like the metaverse, it's fun, but it needs to be highly like an hour a day, a couple hours a day. But what's going to end up happening, and Ron, I think you can shed a little more light on this, is people are going to go off. They're going to go out of control with it because it's so addicting. It's going to hijack as human beings, our operating system, our OS will be hijacked by this metaverse or like models. And we need to be completely aware of it and able to combat it once we see ourselves kind of going down this slippery slope of the future of technology and AI.
Gosh, Kristin, we could do a whole podcast on just the degradation of human culture and connection.
Yeah.
There's so many things happening. I won't delve into that now, but this research has, I got to tell you, Chris and I are actually recording this earlier than usual. I was so anxious to put this podcast together, as was she. It's just exciting, intriguing stuff. But anyway.
It really is. It really is. And I'll before we move on, I wanted to mention my son, who's 9 years old, he plays Roblox. And I'm monitoring it. He only gets an hour a day, yada, yada. But what he loves to play is there's a game where you can build a mansion and the lifestyle to go along with it. And it has ways that you earn money. But he is so obsessed with this mansion. And now it's almost as if it's starting to, after I did all this research for today's episode, I'm more concerned than I was because, for instance, I put my feet up on my husband's dash in his car, and my son the other day said, "You don't get to put your feet on the dash of my Lambo." So like in his 9-year-old mind, he's going to own a Lamborghini, and we joke around, but now I'm like, wow, this metaverse and this whole thing where you can, weren't you saying that you read somewhere that you can actually buy land in the metaverse? Or just
that's a great segue.
Wild things. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep an eye on my son after learning all this stuff.
Oh my gosh. keep your feet off the dash of the Lambo. I do
will.
wonder, maybe that's going to give him a wealth mindset. Maybe he will be able to really take off with that.
Well, Ron, that's where I went initially. I was like, good for you. You can earn anything you want with working smart. But then after reading this, I'm like, okay, let's make sure I keep this balance here, keep his feet on the ground of reality.
Yeah, you're going to have to repo the Lambo and give him a horse and buggy. I
am. We're going to go back 200 years.
Well, most people know that Facebook has changed to Meta, and it's a metaverse is what it's short for. And this is literally a definition from online. Meta focus will be to bring the metaverse to life and help people connect. They want to develop a whole culture where people reportedly commune with one another in a virtual reality setting. People are actually purchasing land, as you mentioned, in the metaverse. Buying a virtual mansion or land is the next big thing after NFTs, and we may see a surge in the concept very soon. An NFT, by the way, is a non-fungible token. It's a unique digital identifier that is recorded on a blockchain and is used to certify ownership and authenticity. Kristin, I saw a video clip. People are purchasing land in the metaverse.
Oh my goodness.
But also I saw people sitting in their office and people were walking around. They're waving, doing all these things. But like you said, there's no actual human contact. And I don't know. It freaks me out a little.
Yeah, it freaks me out too. And I just wanted to bring up, I just listened to a podcast, and it's a 103-year-old woman, and she was talking about her health is really, really, really phenomenal. And she was being interviewed on why are you thriving at 103 years old? And she said, it's because I wake up every morning with purpose and have a sense of community. What can I do for my community every single day? And I really feel like when you lose that interaction and that even that physical touch with other humans, that your ability to thrive will dwindle. And so, again, something to keep an eye on. As awesome as all this can be, you need to be mindful.
Chris and I discussed this before we started recording, and I was telling her I dated myself that, I was really in law enforcement at the outset of the internet, or at least when it became, really started to develop in homes around the country. And we knew that we were way behind the 8 ball. And sure enough, everything from exchanging explicit pictures of, child pornography, there were all kinds of hacking things that were happening, and the laws didn't catch up. And I'm concerned that the same thing is going to happen with AI, that there's going to be these innovative crimes that begin, and there's not going to be the laws in place to prosecute. There's not going to be any way for law enforcement to investigate. Right. So, Kristin, you and I are always, we try to be positive. We try to be solution-minded. But I do think part of this podcast is wake up. We need to be looking at this, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Well, Ron, I have to interject real quick because try watching a true crime story about cyberbullying or any of that with a police officer. Because I'm sitting there like, why didn't you guys do anything? Obviously, it's not my husband or his department, but I'm like, this is so mind-boggling on why law enforcement didn't step in sooner. And he's like, well, because of this, this, and this, we aren't able to do this. We don't have the technology to do this. And so you're so right. We are so far behind in the United States in law enforcement, and I'm sure the rest of the world, as far as AI is growing so fast and technology is going so fast, and we are just racing to catch up. Yeah. Not fast enough, though.
It's true. Another interesting point is cloning, and that's the process of generating a genetically identical copy of a cell or an organism. And a lot of countries have banned cloning, but there's always speculation that it still happens. But I think that's just mind-boggling.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Since when does a ban stop anyone?
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, let's be honest. That's concerning.
For our listeners, I don't want to be too detailed, but you're going to hear another term that is coming on. As a matter of fact, there was just a conference in Chicago of tech people getting together to discuss this, and it's IA. It's literally just AI backwards. And IA is sometimes called cognitive automation, and it's the use of automation technology. It's basically determining how to use AI. And I wanted to plug that in because it's really coming on the forefront because there's so much AI. You're wondering, well, how will people even know how to use it? And that's kind of a system that's being put into place to help businesses, entrepreneurs to navigate the world of AI. Let's discuss a few other advancements. I mean, we have discussed some negative things, but I think this is very interesting. According to a recent study by the Boston Consulting Group, fully autonomous vehicles are expected to account for a quarter of all new cars by 2035, a slice of the auto industry totaling around $77 billion. The autonomous vehicle race is particularly impactful because of the major implications to not only car OEMs who have to fundamentally change the way they approach their product, but to the hardware and software companies building the technology that will support these highly sophisticated and regulated vehicles. What's your thoughts on autonomous cars, Kristin?
Okay, as everyone can imagine, not very positive. Here's what I'll go into. A recent poll by the Energy Policy Institute revealed that more than half of Americans, this was just very recent, this was in March, state that they will not purchase an electric vehicle for their next car purchase, despite the White House's major push on the industry. Ron, are you surprised by those numbers? More than half of Americans.
I am a little surprised because it seems to contradict the previous poll that I read.
Right.
But I also realized that even though AI is growing, the word and the concerns about AI are growing.
Yes.
And I do think vehicles are such a staple of American culture. I mean, baseball, hot dogs, and apple pies and Chevrolet used to be a slogan. So I do think that is deep in the heart of Americans, but also that thrill of learning to drive. I can remember, oh my gosh, the day I got my driver's license, it was just the most phenomenal day because I got to drive a car. So I think there's a lot of variables there.
Right.
I'm almost glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, I was actually quite surprised by it. I live in Portland, Oregon, and so people can't wait to tell you that they drive an EV. They're very, very proud of that. And so it was very surprising to read that so many Americans are actually against it. I've actually read a number of polls that are relatively recent, and it's not looking great for, with as much energy and effort that's going into producing EVs, there's just as much opposing it right now. And I'm wondering if that is intentional, if when something is pushed on you, you're going to push back. So I think that might be an aspect of it. But I wanted to bring up, there's this great fictional TV series called Upload, and I cannot wait for season 3 to come out. But it's about a digital afterlife program. Now, it's fictional, but many aspects of the show are something that if it doesn't already exist today in a test lab somewhere, it will in the near future. For instance, self-driving cars. So in this show, it depicts a driver playing zero role in driving their car. So they pretty much sit in the back, feet up, they're working on their laptops, whatever they need to do, and they are being driven to their destination. All they had to do was type in the destination address, and the vehicle drives them there, just as if you had an actual driver. So in the show, I'm not going to give too much away because I think it's a great show and everyone should check it out. But what happens when someone hacks the operating system, someone that doesn't like you, maybe a foe, and they drive you into a concrete pillar, right? So may or may not be able to happen in the future if you have a self-driving car that is able to be hacked. And actually, the current EVs are able to be hacked. There are concerns about that going around right now. How secure is the operating system? So just things to think about. And seeing that in that show, I was like, okay,
Kristin, is that a spoiler?
This is interesting.
Did you just provide a spoiler for
I
Upload?
said hypothetical.
Because I'm going to watch that. Okay.
Hypothetical. I tried not to give away too much.
Oh, can't you imagine some brilliant teenagers hacking cars?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think anything can be hacked, honestly.
Wow.
Anything with an operating system.
Okay, Kristin, my favorite show, one of my favorite, is Severance. And it's on Apple TV. And the premise is that these individuals, they undergo a surgical procedure and it puts a chip in their brain. And then when they walk through this elevator, it erases their memory on the outside. They call them innies and outie. You're outside.
We're not talking about a belly button.
We're we're not. Innies and outies. So when you're inside, all you know is your work family. They don't really understand what they're doing at work, which is part of the plot. I'm not going to do a spoiler like my co-host did. But then when they leave for the day, and they stagger when people leave so you don't walk out with someone. And so anyway, they walk out and they become their person again. Now they know they work for this company. They know they're severed, but they don't know what happens inside. And it gets more and more interesting, intriguing, and exciting. So, maybe you want to check that one out.
Yeah,
Kristin.
That's right up my alley. That sounds very interesting, actually.
It really is. So Forbes had a lot to say about AI. For example, AI has already impacted the world of business and personal lives. We know that. From algorithms to Siri to object identification. Listen to this. As a matter of fact, 2 competing systems from Google and Microsoft were proven to be better at identifying objects in images than humans were in over 1,000 categories. Also, companies are using AI to measure profit, loss, paid time off, accounts receivable, balance sheets, cost per unit, return on investment. All of this stuff is being calculated now at an unbelievable pace, but also it can be done at a very little expense. And it used to take all of these, as we called man hours, to get this stuff done. So that in and of itself, businesses are taking advantage of that, but you can see where the general public are looking at potential job losses when you talk about this.
You know, we talk about images, Ron. Have you ever tried to look at your photo library and just realize that you can type in and say cat, dog, and it will just bring up from your personal photo library on your phone. It will bring up images that you've taken and captured using your phone of a cat, dog, or whatever you're filtering it by.
I did not know that.
So I discovered that a few months back, and it creeped me out. But I'll tell you what, it did help me out when my kids and I, we were just putting together a little memory book for our dog that passed. And I just typed in dog, and I was able to sort through 12 years of pictures in a very short period of time. But as you can imagine, I'm concerned that could be abused by people. But right now, AI is sorting our photos in our very own cell phones.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, test it out after the show.
There you go, folks. Not only where leadership meets entertainment, but you're getting all those little tidbits of information.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, to continue on with Forbes, the technology is behind the voice-controlled virtual assistants. We said Siri, Alexa. It lets Spotify, YouTube, and BBC iPlayer suggest what you might want to play next. It helps Facebook and Twitter decide which social media posts to show users. Without verification, there could be hyper-intelligent bots who begin to post on social media. They have input data, which helps them evolve to assess the best way to manipulate people. And they could literally sway public opinion. And I just heard Elon Musk, he was on Tucker Carlson's new show on Twitter. He discussed the exact same thing, and that was his concern. It sounds a little Hitler-esque. What do you think of that, Kristin?
Oh, yeah. I believe it. I think we all know there's been interference for some time as far as our emotions are concerned. And like I said, our personal OS has been hijacked for some years. And so I think Elon's right to sound the alarm on, even though he's there creating some of this, right? Yeah. It's great to hear him actually sounding the alarm on that it can go too far.
Yeah. Okay, a little more. AI lets Amazon analyze customers' buying habits to recommend future purchases, and the firm is also using the technology, of course, to crack down on fake reviews. Bill Gates says AI is the most important tech advance in decades. Believes it could be as big or bigger than the dot-com craze. So for you stock buyers, you may want to be thinking about that.
Yes. Yes.
And all of these new apps, major stuff.
Well, this one, Ron, that I know you and I had discussed recently, it's called ChatGPT, and then also Snapchat's My AI. You plugged your book, The Dirty Side of Leadership book, in. Tell us about that experience.
ChatGPT is phenomenal and concerning, but when I was first introduced to it, someone literally typed the name of my book, and it it pulls from all these different sources, but it provided a whole outline. And I mean, it's something I could use, as an ad or content to promote my book, which was scary and amazing. But I've seen where universities are starting to ban Chat GPT because, it can do all the college papers. You can literally write a book. I was talking to someone who knows the process of uploading a book on Amazon, that you could literally, think about this, you could say, Chat GPT, you could program it, write me a book on cats, since you brought that up.
Wow.
Then you've got someone over here, takes it, uploads it. You're producing 100 books in a couple of months for sale.
Wow.
It is bizarre. It's phenomenal. And I'm not sure where that's going to head, and I'm not sure how that can be regulated.
Right. I was just trying to think of copyright laws. Like, is it copyrighted if they produce that and then you go on to use it? Now, do you have to pay for Chat GPT?
There's an online version that's free. I've been playing around with it, and you can get anything. And by the way, a bunch of content creators are starting to use that for their social media posts.
Interesting.
So anyway, let's talk a little bit more about some concerns.
Yeah.
So some of the same technologies we've discussed, think about this. Facebook, YouTube can determine how many viewers and participants they want to expose information to. I think there's a little term you might have heard of, Kristin, called shadow banning.
I sure have.
But this, and I know it's almost like there's a political divide, but I think people should be very concerned that some programmers, we don't even know how old they are, we don't know their backgrounds, can determine how they want to, send information out. And that's a lot of responsibility. I would not have wanted that responsibility. I still don't.
It's playing God is what it is.
It is playing God. And Kristin sent me a post that I don't know if we'll go into, but that was freaky, to say the least. But this is a lot of power, and they can stifle content creators. They can target individuals. And AI also helps companies determine many specifics about the customers. That sounds great, but for example, they can monitor, as I said, the shopping habits, computer searches, and have the ability to obtain personal data. And Kristin, I've been the victim of hacking. In 2015, the Office of Personnel Management. Now, that's the government agency a lot of people may not know about. It's called OPM. But they maintain the data off of SF-86 forms, and those forms are used to determine your security clearance.
Oh, okay.
I remember doing the original paperwork, and every 5 years I'd have to undergo a reinvestigation. But that original SF-86 had everything. And I mean, you have to give street markers, street addresses. They interview people like the FBI did mine at the time. They interviewed my neighbors. They interview family members. Like, it is everything about you.
Wow.
So there were hackers that hacked in, and of course I got the letter about the OPM breach, and I was one of the people that my personal data was stolen, and the only thing the government offered was 18 months of free data protection software, and that's it.
Wow.
How would you feel about that, Kristin?
I don't feel great about it. I know something very similar happened to my husband with the Portland Police Bureau. You always wonder, at least I do, was it intentional? Because it was really when all the rioting was happening in 2020. But somehow all of their addresses and information was leaked. And people that didn't support the police and still don't, got a hold of it. And so they did the same thing for the Portland Police Bureau employees. They basically went in and put their some software in, and they were able to remove their names and addresses from, I think it's at over 150 different sites had my husband's name and address. He keeps getting an update telling him how many things have been removed. I'm thinking I want to do the same thing also. But so that happened to us personally at the height of the anti-police movement. And then just recently, all the Oregon DMV information was hacked. And so I'm like, okay, I know I'm in there, so it doesn't feel great. And I'm not going to, worry too much because there's, lots and lots of us. But it is concerning because that's a lot of details there, especially for what you had hacked. that's next level. That's pretty much like a background investigation.
It is the background.
I mean, it goes into very, very minute details of your life and kids and everything. So very concerning. But not good.
Doxing is a term that's used,
Yes.
like collective doxing would be what happened to the Portland Police Department.
Yes.
But that's a concern as well. Like, who will, all of my information is there, my addresses and all that, because it's updated every 5 years as well.
Right.
So, I could be doxed if somebody wanted to do that. And I've heard stories of, particular people, politicians, news reporters that people disagree with. They dox them.
Right.
And people are able to know exactly where they live. So that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
A little more here, Kristin. The BBC reported that in May, this is so interesting, Geoffrey Hinton, widely considered to be one of the godfathers of artificial intelligence, quit his job at Google, warning that AO chatbots could soon be more intelligent than humans. Later that month, the U.S.-based Center for AI Safety published a statement supported by dozens of leading tech specialists. They argue AI could be used to generate misinformation that could destabilize society. In the worst-case scenario, they say machines might become so intelligent that they take over, leading to the extinction of humanity. When discussing concerns about AI, the EU's tech chief, and that's Margrethe Vestager, told the BBC that AI's potential to amplify bias or discrimination was a pressing concern. In particular, she is concerned about the role AI could play in making decisions that affect people's livelihoods, such as loan applications, adding that there was definitely a risk that AI could be used to influence elections. That's a hot topic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't going to go there, but the manipulation is real. It exists. It's possible. Oh, absolutely. Well, governments around the world, they're wrestling with how to regulate AI. Members of the European Parliament just voted in favor of the EU's proposed Artificial Intelligence Act, which will put in place a strict legal framework for AI, which companies would need to follow. So basically, it's creating guardrails. And we have, Margrethe Vestager. Sorry, I probably slaughtered her name, but it says guardrails are needed to counter the biggest risks posed by AI. The legislation says which is expected to come into effect in 2025, categorizes applications of AI into levels of risk to consumers, with AI embedded video games or spam filters falling into the lowest risk category. Higher risk systems, like those used to evaluate credit score systems or decide access to housing, like we talked about earlier, would face the strictest controls. These rules will not apply in the UK, where the government set out its vision for the first future of AI in March.
In conclusion, certainly AI will bring many opportunities for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. We certainly encourage everyone to take advantage of technology to promote business. However, the public at large must get ahead of this unknown advance in technology. In the wrong hands, it could destroy companies, content creators, and possibly even sway elections. So, and I know, Kristin, this is somewhat extreme, but just to give a very simple example of what AI could potentially do in the wrong hands or in its evolution. Let's say iBots, for example, or machinery has been programmed to destroy a building. The concern would be, let's say there's a child riding a bicycle, and gets in the way of the mission, which is to destroy that building. The AI is not going to consider collateral damage, or not going to be concerned with it, and not going to be concerned with other things that a human being, is going to have the emotions for. So I think that's a very simple example, and we've given many others, but there are concerns. But hey, we want to build those guardrails, but we want our audience to be on the cutting edge of this. We need to prosper. We need to find out some of the softwares and technologies that's out there that can promote and enhance business. I know I use several. Kristin, you are a social media influencer, and I know you use different apps. And I think there's just ways that we can really take advantage of the time we live in. There's so many people I've talked to like, I wish I'd invested in .com, I wish I'd invested in Apple back in the day and all this. Well, this is the moment, folks. Do your homework, do your research, and get in there and prosper during this time. But also be sure to write your Congress people and tell them if they're looking to put some guardrails up that they're needed.
Yes.
We don't want to be behind the 8 ball here.
Yes.
Kristin, wow, was this exciting. I love doing the podcast, but she and I have been going back and forth for our listeners about stuff that we're finding. We could just keep doing episodes on this topic.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's so much to unpack here. And I'll just say one thing. I'm a big proponent of AI within parameters, like we were just talking about. And the perfect example, Ron just mentioned, I do a lot on social media, and I love that Instagram has auto-generate captions so that if someone is not in a place where they can actually listen to what you're saying, they can read what you're saying. So there's AI as a major positive. But here's something I did that it just shows you need to keep an eye on what you're doing. Is there was a misspelling where I was talking about MRSA, M-R-S-A. Instagram auto captions spelled it M-E-R-S-A, made me look like an idiot, like I actually don't know that it's M-R-S-A. I didn't catch it before I submitted it. And so I had probably 300 people say it's M-R-S-A, not MRSA. And, so it's something as small as that. So here we have this great technology at our fingertips, and we are both using it every day. But keep your eye on it because it can foul up just like that did to me and make you look like a numbskull and spell MRSA wrong. So it's a perfect example of use it with caution.
That's right. Wow. Okay, this is great. Thanks, Kristin. Man, I've enjoyed this. Be the leader.
Same here. Woo. Gotta take a nap after this one, Ron.
No kidding. All right. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.